Awaken to Life Radio. My name is Narayani Gaya, and I am your hostess. And I am joined today by the beautiful Kelly Meehan. Hi, Kelly.
Hi.
Hi again. We are doing our best to bring you the highest quality audio and video streaming today possible as we explore the rebirth of human consciousness, what that means to us, what our angels and spirit guides are telling us. We're going to talk about birth. We're going to share stories. And this podcast is for anyone who's interested in communicating and connecting with the other side and knows that we're not just physical beings alone, but that we're here to remember who we are, but also there's so much that I think, are missing. This is something I want to I'm excited to talk to you about all the things, Kelly, because I feel like once I started communicating with the spirit world, it like filled out my aura, like it filled out
Mm.
my life, and it helped me answer questions that I always had about the nature of reality. And I feel like if people are not communicating with spirit, they're missing like it's like, watching a football game and like missing half of the game and like you don't even know what happens. Like it's like you're missing half the show. And the show is your life. So thank you so much for being here. Quick mention about Miss Kelly. Kelly is a spirit baby medium, an author, and a recognized spirit baby medium, a medical intuitive, which is so cool, an author of Notes from a Spirit Baby Medium. And so we're going to talk about fertility, conception, consciousness, and I'm just so excited to be here. I don't know if you know, but I'm a doula too. Did you know
Oh
that I was a doula?
no, I did not
Yeah,
know that. Cool.
yeah,
I love it.
yeah. I'm
Are you a
trained as a
birth
doula.
doula, postpartum doula, full spectrum doula? Where you at?
I don't do doula work right now. It's been many years because I stepped out of it because I didn't have any children, and I felt like if I was going to really be supporting women, I wanted to have children, and then I never had children, so just kind of didn't go in that direction. And that was my own mind. My midwife teacher said, "No, if you don't have children, like you should be a doula because you're available at night." And like you have the
Yeah.
space and the freedom. Her name is Wapio. She's very beloved here in
Oh
West
yes,
North
I know
Carolina.
her. Yep.
So I was in Wapio's first doula training back in the day in the living
Wow.
room around the goddess altar for
You're
4 months.
so lucky.
I am. I feel that. And some of my friends here were in her first midwife program, and it was really, really like roots and special and just, yeah, really special. But then I also did a DONA. So that was a lay doula training, lay person, whatever that means. It means not like a medical doula. And then I also did DONA training, and I did a few births. And then when I used to do body work, I did a lot of postpartum. So I kind of brought it in. Then I started teaching Ayurvedic education. I taught Ayurvedic massage, and I brought in a lot of like postpartum care and massage. But I would be at births if people wanted me to be, at their birth, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
But it's like an initiation to sit with someone at birth, like it is to sit with someone at death. It's a gift, and it's a blessing. And so yeah, there's a few kids running around in the world whose births I was at that I get to see now who are older, and it's really special. Yeah.
That is special. I love that.
Yeah. So let's open right up in talking about your work as a spirit baby medium. As somebody, I actually also work, and I'll share more about that with y'all. I do like birth clearings and stuff, but I'll talk to you more about that later. But tell me about how you got into being a messenger for the other side. Because if you're a medical intuitive and you're a spirit baby medium, what I want to ask, do you also do ancestral mediumship where you can connect with people or do you more just work with birth babies, like babies, spirit babies?
Yeah, really good questions. I feel like I'm very multidimensional. And I think you're multidimensional. Like where are you going? Where's the energy going? What feels like it fits in perfectly or imperfectly? And for me, like I started my work, actually it was when I was 15 is when I discovered I had extrasensory perceptions, we'll say, and I've had a lot of training. And then I put it more into form of like, I started to realize because I knew and connected with people in a way that was different. And I was like,
Yes.
right? And then I was like, I realized that I see a lot of information with people, and what do I want to do with that? I was like doing hands-on body work in my 20s, like very little, like literally a massage table in my living room, like and then they would just look at me and be like, how do you know this? And I was like, I don't know. And then that's really, and then more of that came. And then I was like, I became pregnant on purpose. I was really scared, actually. I was like, am I ready? Am I not ready? Like, that's our question always. Am I ready? Not ready. And when I
was young to be pregnant. You were what, like 20 or?
Oh, no, I was 35.
Okay. Because we were 15. You were doing massage.
It was 20s, and then I came into my 30s. I wasn't sure if I was going to have children or not because of my fears, and that's a long conversation. I was like, I don't know.
I definitely want to talk about that because I think women who are listening who either have had children or want to have children will benefit a lot from that. And I just want to say I can relate with getting information from doing body work because that's what happened with me, because I did a lot of massage therapy year after year. I worked all over the universe. And I was also meditating and doing yoga and purifying and on my own spiritual, personal development, awakening journey. But I would just you just start getting something, like you're working on someone and you see a horse and you're like, oh, do you ride horses? And they're like, oh, the hip you're on came from an accident many years ago, or maybe past life stuff and stuff like that. It just kind of starts coming when you're in that sacred space. Yeah.
And I remember, you're making me remember when I used to, in my little West Side LA apartment back many, many moons ago, where my husband's like, did you make him cry again? Because every man and woman that came in would leave crying. And I was like, I don't know what's happening here. And then I
have a joke about that where I used to say,
yeah.
Oh, I only made 2 people cry today, even in my coaching as well, because we get into a sacred healing space.
Yeah.
And that's what happens when we are moving out of confusion into clarity, because our tears are like the salt water of Mother Ocean, right? They help purify the heart. Yeah, it's such a gift if somebody feels safe enough to release emotion with you like that.
So then I decided to go back to school to study, and then I was still like, I don't know what that meant because I studied something very specific, somatic psychology, which was so like, oh my gosh, it was such an incredible experience. And then the institute got bought out, and like these teachers came from around the world, and really people didn't last the first year. It was like, we're being asked to go into our bodies. Like, who wants to do that, right? So for me,
doing that way before it became like a popular fad. Where did you do the training? Where was that school?
It was Santa Barbara Graduate Institute, which I think Chicago school bought them out. So, but I had the most you do? So we have somatic psychology, preperinatal psychology, tiny overlapping. But at the time, I was so far away from anything with birth psychology, because what I later realized is that my own birth trauma, it was hidden in here. And I didn't want to look at which is interesting because I love the birth psychology. I'm so into it. And so then I had my son, and I realized there wasn't a lot of spiritual doulaing, or there wasn't a lot of people like that talking about it. And it was very hard. I really needed support, and I didn't have what I needed. And it propelled such a huge awakening for me. And after the birth of my son, my firstborn Rain, I feel like he broke open my second chakra to become this rebirth of another person. And his energy brought me into this field and this work.
Oh, I have the chills. Is that common that birth will bust open women's second chakra?
I feel like, here's the thing. I've spoken about this before. I had not a very good postpartum. It was more than blues, let's say.
Unfortunately, unfortunately, that's very normal.
Yeah.
That's why Wapio taught us, like postpartum is like the forgotten 4th trimester. Now people call it the 4th trimester.
Yes. So I went into what it felt like to me, looking at it years later, was there's a death that happens. So my old Kelly died, and there was nobody to help me rebirth this new Kelly with a baby. And I was like, and I feel like everybody's like, no, I'm not minimizing, like, oh, there's chemical imbalance, hormones, but I'm like, no, this is a death that nobody helped me through. And so I got really dark. I actually put my baby down on the bed and went outside and cried and said I shouldn't live anymore, it got to that point. And I was like, and then I knew, I was like, that's not good to think that way, because I was very just, I needed more, and I didn't know, I didn't have a tribe at the time. I didn't have anyone to come and take care of me. And you need that so much.
And it's
So I was like,
expensive. Like, how are you going to bring in a
yes,
full-time nurse or
yes,
$100 an hour for a massage therapist? That's
no.
not going to, what, I could take a shower once every 3 weeks. Like, right. Yeah.
So
That's
I was,
unfortunately, very
yeah.
common.
So that to me, it was like a death for something new. And I am rebirthed into this Kelly, that the other one, I have to let her die because she's no longer. Because now I'm here with these beings. And then I had my second son many years later. It's like I become a different being, a different person. I don't even really remember who I was before. And I don't think I need to be honest, because now I have them in this reality that need me so much. And I don't think I was like, they need me like too much. But again, it wasn't being nurtured by what I needed. And then the second time I had a great birth, great postpartum, but I was also did 5.5 years in between my kids of work to get to that level of like, do I invite another being into my life or not? So my children have brought me more deeper into the work. And I think something you said, I feel like spirit baby medium is a term I created. It didn't exist before. So I created this, what I call Spirit Baby Inc. Like I created the book, the cards, the pod, like I created out of nothing. I took whatever, and it was interesting because what I studied, I did have like, when I was studying in the psychology, I had to do an internship, and this is such divine. I was like, I don't want to work with mentally ill people. Bless their souls, not my journey.
Yep.
They're like, Kelly, there's an attachment parenting internship, and I'm like, okay. Little did I know that I would be doing this work, and that brought me into such a foundation of attachment parenting, working with families, and then later infant development therapy with babies, and using that connection with babies. And then I'm like, got to a point I was like, I'm going to do this myself. And as you know, as an entrepreneur, it's not easy, because I'm like, what am I doing? What does this look like? And then over a decade later, I'm like, this is what it is. This is what it looks like. And so that's kind of where I landed with,
with niching into the specific work.
Yeah.
Incredible. It's so beautiful. I think one of the things that I've seen as a thread in coaching people on purpose, because I think if we, there's so much I want to share with you. If we are, how do I put this? It's been interesting the last 12 years coaching people who are driven to live their purpose. First of all, I don't think we have one purpose. I think our purpose, there are infinite reasons why we're here. So I don't think we ever have one purpose. Life is just way too multidimensional and complicated to say we're only here for one thing. We try, right? I'm here to love and not have fear. Okay, fine. But like, what does that mean? Like, okay, do the dishes, whatever.
Yeah.
Call your mom, like, it's fine. And I went through my own integration in my 20s around like waking up spiritually to higher love and light, and downloading and channeling and not knowing what was happening and feeling everything. And then I went to massage school because I was naturally always touching people. But what I found out a few years in, and that was like my first like official course of study besides like the life curriculum of spiritual initiation, but that was in my 20s. And after a couple, like 5 years in, I was like, oh, I'm touch deprived and have been. I'm the one who's always who needs a nervous system regulation by having body work, So I do this, but I need this. Same thing with my core body of work, which is about, awakening and then helping people ground higher knowledge. I went through that and needed that. So now I feel like I can do it, which is why I also didn't do doula work or birth work, because I didn't have, even though there's male doctors helping women have babies that aren't giving birth. I hope that doesn't happen. I hope men don't try to give birth. Oh gosh. But there's something that I found with people. They come and they think that they want this, they want to do that, but as they go deeper into explore what the body is telling you and how the body beholds information, like you don't need to fly out to the Akashic records to find the messages of your path. I mean, you can if you want. It's fun, but your body, if you learn how to listen and hear the stories, which is what happened with me as well. I'd be working on people and I would hear sounds or vibrate or scream. They were just like, emotions. I would hear emotion, kind of strands of energy in the body. And we talked about this a few weeks ago on the podcast, so I don't want to get too into it, but that wisdom that's like, oh, this is for me. And then if you take that all the way, everything's for you. But not from a negative ego, everything's for you, but everything's for you to evolve into if you have an impulse. For example, we went through Hurricane Helene in Western North Carolina, which was like a war with the Great Mother. I mean, I've never seen anything like it. It was like a war zone. We lost
natural disasters are intense. Yes.
So it was the most intense thing next to losing
scary.
my partner and my dad. Yeah. To when they passed. I didn't lose them, but their transition. When I'm talking to a medium, I'm aware. But anyway, so after Hurricane Helene, I jumped into service, which is apparently a trauma response where you go right into sympathetic response, but it's healthy use of, it's a healthy alchemy, healthy way to alchemize trauma is to be in action. So we all became besties with our neighbors that we never knew. We came together as a community. We supported each other. We brought coffee to people we didn't have power for 3 weeks or water. So we showed up for each other. I started volunteering. I hadn't been doing body work in a few years. I brought a table down to beloved Asheville, which was like the number 1 supply place. It was housing everyone, and started volunteering, blah, 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 blah. And then I popped up with some of my clients. We did a 1-year nonprofit project where we did healing services every month. We brought in therapists. We got trauma training for practitioners. So we trained 25 trauma holistic healers in trauma therapy. And the goal of the project was for practitioners to be well-sourced so that we were all well-sourced and not depleting, because every day was overwhelming, right? For months and months and months and months. And we're still healing.
Really? Wow.
Later. Yeah. So we started the project with the idea to have a collective of practitioners that fill their cup. Well, what happened? My shoulder froze up after a month of carrying my old massage table. What happened? Like 5 months later, I went to a class. I got way injured. I was on my back. I couldn't help anyone all that summer.
Wow, interesting.
Anything. And my angels were like, "Yep, this whole project you created is for you. Like that's what you need.
Yeah.
That's what you want." And it was like, 9 months later, we're like laughing hysterically, and I realized it was. So, but it's often something that's revealed after you follow the impulses.
Yes.
Right.
I agree with what you're saying about, like the path of us. Like 2 things you said, it was interesting, is like, and I really appreciate hearing that, because people always feel like, what's my purpose? What's my purpose? It's like, wow, like there's layered. So people will ask for their babies, by the way, with me, and I'll say, let's just look at it as a theme with different purposes.
Right.
And something else you said about something I've reflected probably a year or 2 ago, maybe a few years ago. I said to myself, why do you do this work that you do? Because it was really interesting, because I've been busy working with one-on-ones for years. I've never had a drought. And then I built more energy around that. I was like, what is that? Working with mothers who want to be mothers, or mothers that are in pregnancy. And I was like, it comes, and then a friend of mine said, do you feel like you're healed?
Like you're
like it's enough. Yeah. And I said, it's so weird. No one's ever asked me that. I said, well, I hope I'm doing it right. But I realized my foundation with my mom from the moment of my own birth was who she was, and the way I traumatically became this journey together. And I feel like my mom, I've had to take care of her for 20 years before she passed, like 20 years of
wow.
Mental illness, physical problems, really a really traumatized woman. That's what it was from her own upbringing. And people think of all these, like, I don't know. And so that journey where I had to advocate for her and seeing her in really terrible places. And I'll never forget,
Mm.
probably a few years before she passed, she looked at me and says, "How did you become so strong?" I was like, "What?" She's saying that to me. Because my mom doesn't say that to me. She's takes because
Right.
she was so wounded. And
Right.
I literally looked at her and I said, "It's because of you." But what I didn't fill in the blank was because of your weakness and your sickness, I was not going to be that. But she
Oof.
didn't know, she didn't have to hear this all. So my mom, I realized our connection, I've always grieved, I realized not having my mom ever. And it really
Mm.
made my body sick. I made my body really sick. And I had to
Now,
heal
so
so
you got
many
sick
layers.
after she passed, or
Say
during?
that again.
You got sick while you were caring
Oh
for
no,
her,
I
like
was sick
after?
from the beginning. From
Okay.
infancy, I was a kid that was sick. I was IV'd, hospitalized, medical traumatized. And then I was just like
Wow.
multiple autoimmune disorders. I was diagnosed with like from rheumatoids to Lyme disease. I'm 15. I was on experimental IV therapy. Then in my 20s, they're like, it's lupus. It's always something. And then I got rid of that model of
Mm.
like health. And then I went into the Eastern holistic and then I actually healed. Um,
Wow. I
yeah.
also
So
had
yeah.
autoimmune as a child and was diagnosed with childhood rheumatoid arthritis, but I think it was Lyme because I was not,
Yeah.
the Lyme
So
tests don't work. But anyway,
yeah,
keep
that
going.
exactly. Yes,
Right.
that's a whole other podcast. Anyways, what I've
Well, I did
discovered
it in
from, yeah.
2023,
Oh,
actually.
wow.
Yeah, we have so
Okay.
much to talk about. Okay, keep going.
Yeah. So what I've
Mhm.
discovered from doing the infant work and the infant connection and awareness is that and a lot of the somatic therapists, they're the top people, the people that are researching, they are confirming this, that when
Yeah.
you're born traumatically, your whole cortisol level's different. When you don't have safe
Mm.
parents because they have trauma or they are not safe in their regulated body because they're not regulated, the child is in high alert, which means by the
Mhm.
time they're a teenager, this is why we see, this is what I feel we see in late
Mhm.
teens and 20s autoimmune disorders, because now your body's growing, it's developing, and that old trauma is really because
Mm.
you weren't safe ever, and then your body's
Right.
using so much, and then you're all of a sudden you're sick, and not to minimize environmental stuff too, but I feel like that's the origin, because when you have a regulated child with a regulated mother, guess what, they're actually not going to be sick unless there's a lineage of something. That's
Well,
what I
actually,
feel. Yeah.
right. Well, back to Wapio, right. Well, then that's a whole, yeah. And yes,
Yeah.
and the lineage of something can
Yeah.
exist too. With Wapio, it was really helpful in my early 30s to study with her because she taught us that. Well, I'll have to see if I can get her on the podcast. That'll be really fun.
I'm trying to get her I'm trying to get her I want to hear
Oh,
her.
really? Okay,
Yeah.
okay, okay. Good. Well, you let me know. I'll see if we can. I can introduce you if you don't. Do you know her?
Well, we've messaged each other honestly like 10 years ago. And then
Yeah,
I know she's a busy person, and then we keep nothing is
yeah,
ever, but
yeah,
it's
yeah, yeah.
okay. I'm trusting the energy of
It's
whatever's meant to
perfect.
be.
Anyway,
Yeah.
but so what she taught us was about hospital birth versus home birth and how your
Mm.
immunity is stronger, which now science confirms, being in your own native environment.
Wow.
So, right? So it's like your native environment versus a sterilized environment. And we also understand germ theory now, and they're validating that germs aren't bad. It's actually good to be exposed. Now kids bring their chicken pox to their friends and their neighbors so the kids' immunity can get stronger. And it really helps me if I think about energy and immunity from a perspective of, like you talked about the Eastern way, like in Taoism, it's called like the Wei Qi is your field, right? So if your immunity is strong, it's not just you have little bugs inside that can fight the other bugs, or blood that can fight, good white blood cell count. It's also your energy and your energy field. And if your energy field is strong, then things come in, but your energy field stays strong. So that's why I really love that about energy medicine.
Yeah.
And as you were talking, it reminded me of that, like the value of your own natural design, that we all have
Mm.
a natural design, if regulated, can do what it's here to do and navigate through the toxicity in the world. And that becomes a full-time job
Yes.
once
Oh
you
my
wake
gosh.
up as we were talking about human consciousness, to consciously choose how you spend your time, where you put your thoughts, how you treat your body.
Yeah.
This morning I had a lot to do. I'm, trying to finish this book. I got editors waiting. I got beta readers waiting. And like every second I can squeeze in, I'm like editing another paragraph, like just trying to like get through this process. But I hadn't exercised since yesterday at noon. And I have a small apartment here in Asheville. Like I don't move that much around my house. Like I needed to exercise. So I went on a walk. I was like, and I had another appointment and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I have so much to do, but if I'm not moving, if I'm not in some way exercising today and moving my energy, I'm not going to be able to think or focus. And I'm not going to have the creativity or the inspiration to do what I need to do, because I've seen that. If I'm not regulated, I need to spend half the day regulating, or I need a break. I just need to chill.
And that's the thing. We go in and out of dysregulation, and I don't know. Once we become more tuned into that, there's a kind of synergy and flow with ourselves, and this infancy and childhood trauma is real. It really messes with people.
Oh,
It's what
yeah.
we become. I often joke, and I feel like all the politicians are just inner childs, all beating each other up, kicking each other in the legs. There's such an immaturity to think about it. Like, are we really operating from our adult? A lot of times, I would say a majority of people aren't. And that's the thing. And I get very curious, and I like to go deeper into those, kind of spaces with such curiosity, because I've seen my own journey, and I'm at a time now where I call it becoming myself. Like I'm coming to myself without taking care of my mom and all the energies in my family. Honestly, not that they have to die to do that, but for me, they're all dying. They're all dead. So the lineage has freed me somehow. And I have to then become this other part of myself, which feels really weird once you're orphaned, by the way. It's a weird feeling. You're like, oh my gosh, like there's so much deepness to sit with. And I'm not scared to go there, it's like to explore it. So
I agree. I mean, I had two major experiences with death. One was, I was working for hospice for a couple of years. And that was miserable. And I was like, I want to help people live, not die, similar to
oh, there you go. Yeah.
And so I stopped doing that. The money was good, but it was a lot of these people were stuck in trauma, and I was doing mostly spiritual work, but I was hired to do massage, and I was just too intense. And then I fell in love and had a year with my twin flame, and then he passed away. And so it was like I finally felt seen and loved and met in all the ways. And then he left this world. But he and I had done a lot of spiritual work, so I was prepared for that, which really helped me too, and helped a lot of people that I helped. And then my dad passed. And when my dad passed, it was very beautiful. I mean, he came in my dream the next morning, and he was glowing and happy, like within, 24 hours of his passing. Was like he was free. So it was really a gift.
It's so nice.
I have a lot to talk about my dad, but we'll just let that go. So yeah, there's this thing around not having healthy attachments that will stimulate you to connect to spirit. And what we find is that when there's a lot of trauma or lack of stable, healthy attachments, that we bypass. So for me, in my teenage, early 20s, it was like any drug I can do to have an altered experience, which also Wapio explained to us, that's birth. That is birth.
Yes.
Birth is an altered experience. So
definitely.
When we didn't have children, she was like, whoever here who doesn't have children, and like most of us didn't. She's like, who here's been in an altered state? And we're like, okay, you can hold space for women. And a lot of healers, it's like we're driven by our own trauma, but what's happening is that many people are waking up very fast, and there's a need for mentorship and support besides social media or video, like real life relationships for the healthy attachment, right? And when they don't get it, they get very confused. We find ourselves arguing, and I can identify with this, like to be understood or to be valued. So to bring it back to like the root and say like how we come in is like would you say that how we come in is a core pattern that, if misunderstood, can just be buried during somebody's entire life and be totally running how they communicate with the world?
There you got
Yeah.
it. I
Yeah.
feel like our birth story is very powerful.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, a lot of women actually just was asked this recently, what about like cesarean births? What about intervention? And I said, they're going to happen, and it is trauma. And we're not minimizing that. And it's not about shaming or guilting anybody, but it's the
Mm-hmm.
truth. And what we do after that is everything. So, yes, we can heal through traumas, but the birth story still is going to leave its print. And I
That's
have
right.
examples. I get to witness my own children who came into this world to change a lineage, and they did. And by the way, for me, it was been the hardest thing I've ever had to do. A part of me is like, maybe I won't.
Mm.
I mean, it was that's how hard it was. You ever feel that moment where it's like, when I was healing my mom stuff in my 20s, I remember this beautiful healer just held my heart so well. It's the first time I ever felt safe by a female energy. And she was like, do you want to die, or do you want to, like, what do you want to do? Like, and I was like, oh, I was like, maybe I'll just die. I was like, because, you know, for a split second, you think that you're like, God, it's so hard and it's so terrible,
Yeah.
and you feel it. And then I
Yeah.
realized that I didn't know that my mother's wound was that intense. I really didn't, because I'm just living with what I
No,
know, right?
not until
And
we
so,
discover it. We have no idea.
yeah.
Mhm.
And so then I discovered it more in my 30s, especially opening the space of receiving life. I was really scared, and I half raised my hand because there's
Mm.
so much fear. My fear was so powerful that I was like, maybe I'll never have children.
Mm.
And I had a phobia of birth, which made sense based on how I had an accident and stuff. And so there was I have medical trauma on my pelvic floor. So there's the subconscious stories in there, the stories in there. But no one was saying, no one ever taught me how to release the stories in my body. Like, why would we, right? And now it's different. Like with my own children, oh, it is so different, and they're so
Mm.
healthy. So when you talk about regulation, so my second born at
Mm.
home, not washed, not injected, he is a
Mm.
different energy. His foundation, his moments are so
Mm.
different.
Mm.
He's 9 years old now, barely ever sick, barely.
Mm.
um doesn't do any, we don't go to like doctor visits and do all these checkups. What He's
Right.
healthy, right?
Right.
And he's
And
very
he got the
regulated.
boob, and he right. He got the boob,
I
and he got
nursed both
he
my
got the
children, a
collagen.
lot of nursing,
Right.
and just a lot of attachment parenting. So I know for me, I really needed to slow down and be with my children, because it was very deficient in my body to nurse
Mm.
and to care. And I was very fortunate to have a partnership where dad's involved and he's a part of this.
Mhm.
And but yet baby wants mommy all the time. That's just how that works. And so I look at my
Yeah.
boys now that they're growing, but my younger one, I notice a lot because of his foundation. And he's in a different
Mhm.
soul group too, I feel like, than my older son. My older son, who's working the lineage with me, we had a bit of trauma in the beginning. So it was like, but with my
Mm.
second, I've never been able to experience so much love
Mm.
for the
Mm.
first time in my life, by the way, without a
Mm.
condition and with somebody
Mm.
that was regulated. I realized I've never had anybody
Right.
regulated to show me that. So my
Right.
son,
Mm.
literally yesterday, he doesn't feel good. My kids aren't feeling well right now. And my
Mm.
son, I said to him, his name's Forrest. I said, I love you, Forrest. And I was stretching on the floor. I put music on, let him rest. And he said, I love you more. And then in my
Mm.
heart, I went, yeah, he probably does, because I had to work so hard to know what love was for me and the conditions I was put under.
Mm.
And
Mm.
so there's just, for him, there's such a purity and the
Mhm.
sweetness and the energy he carries. He's so connected. And I know looking at that birth is a really big thing. So coming back to what you're saying, that birth story is powerful.
Birth story is powerful. Yeah, I want to talk about soul groups.
Yeah.
'Cause that's really interesting. And I also want to name how subtle, and I'm hesitant to say special because I think spiritual healers have to be careful not to think that we're special or better because we have awakened our gifts. So I'm going to say crucial. Okay, so it's
I
so
like that.
crucial.
Crucial. Because I don't feel special. Maybe you don't either.
Right.
I don't.
I'm not anymore. Well, I tried when I was younger, and it didn't.
We try, but it's like it doesn't. We're just like, yeah, exactly.
So I don't do that anymore. Hopefully, but you know, I was taught to do remote healing from one of my mentors, and about 20 years ago, after I was going through an awakening, and I had a series of dreams of my parents' higher self, and I saw both of them in these beautiful forms. She was like, "Great, now you're ready for this remote healing training." I was like, "Oh, the thing you do where you clear like 1,000,000 of my past lives, and I kind of believe you, and I don't really know, but my life seems to get better." She's like, "Yeah." I was like, "Okay." Like, okay,
that sounds good.
So I started doing remote healing, and I was really, that's when I learned that I was psychic, and I was like, I could see things, and I know how to do this, and we kind of looked at different layers of people's lives, and then, you know, it's little muscle testing, and you figure out like what's clearing. Like basically, we do the clearing, which I'm not going to get into all the details right now because it's an initiation. But you know, you activate yourself a certain way, tune in, you do the session, and then after you're like, what just happened? And usually it's a lifting of layers. And a lot of times over years, I would call my mentor. I'd be like, okay, so these layers came off. She'd be like, great. Or I have my cousin who's I'm going to get on the podcast too, Stephen Rogata. You know, I would just experience things, and I had to have people to call, and they would say, oh, good, you got that one. You know, like at the death portal, you start to see, like, feel the spiral above and things like that. Like, great. It's like, we discover as we live. I don't know why that keeps coming up today. But I would end up looking right at birth, like when we would look where patterns came in. Like in therapy, they study, like, you know, did this come in at 7? Did this come in at 4? Like if you turn into a little child, like how old are you right now? What part of you is, you know, didn't have a need met or didn't feel seen, and let's like nurture that inner child, right? That's a very common way that we do inner child work. So the work I started doing went all the way back to the womb. And then what I learned was that there are patterns that come in the womb. And it's either that there's weight that you're carrying energetically, or that your weight is out. So it's like two things. Either your energy weight is heavier, or you're missing parts of yourself. And then in energy work, we restore back what's yours, and give away that which is not. But I was taught to be able to track what those specific imprints were. So mom and dad had a fight at 5 months in the womb, even before you came in. That's impacted you into a contraction that every time a man and a woman are fighting in front of you, right? For example. So those are the things that really can only be discovered 10, 20 years later, often through the gift of sight, of inner sight.
So let me tell you, not to cut you off, but I just, when you said that, in my book, I got permission to share a story of this woman I worked with. And there was this moment where I said to her, the session unfolded. All of a sudden, there was this image of her. She was having infertility. Nobody knew why. They said, you're fine. Go have a baby, right? And I said, you were dropped. What is the story? And I said, I literally saw the 70s like kitchen. I said, you're on one of these little bouncy things. You fell, and your parents are yelling. You, as the nonverbal infant, hears the parents fighting, hit the ground. Something's wrong. Like, even though it was an accident. So the story is, and then she's like, oh my gosh, right? So one of her parents passed. She asked her father, and he said, yes, that did happen. And she was blown away, sent me this huge email. And she was like, this was real. She goes, Kelly, like, they were fighting because they were fighting about how I fell off the counter. You remember back in the day, they put the baby on the counter. Nobody thought about all these safety things. And I said, but do you understand that in that moment, your parents are arguing, the people you love and need to care for you and nurture you are arguing about something that was important, but not important, because this is the baby, doesn't know the difference. The baby just feels the threat. I hit the floor. I'm hurting. They're screaming. What's happening right now? And her body's taking in this memory. And so she didn't want to do intervention. And I work a lot with IVF and all these different interventions. She didn't want to do it. So she started to do more forgiveness work, more emotional work. I encourage you to do structural work. And that's hard because the structure is holding a certain energy because of the experience. She ended
Stressful
up, she
integration,
did an like a physiological, like whether it's like
massage.
massage work
Yeah.
or more pelvic floor, because our pelvic,
Yeah.
that whole
Yeah.
area is like there's so much stuff that
Yeah.
and for her, she, it took some time, but she did naturally conceive, and then another, by the way. So it's kind of like that was just a layer, as I'm saying, but like you were sharing, like we can hear
Yeah.
things. So if a baby's born and everybody around them is saying the baby's going to die, something's wrong, the baby feels that energy, even if it wasn't, the baby wasn't going to die at all.
Right.
They're getting
Right.
that story. And this happened with a client where this woman, she had breathing issues, and I said, do you want to know why? And I was like, she's never knew why. And I said, I went back into the timelines. I can go in conception, pregnancy, and birth to see how they did. And I don't do it with everybody, but it's just, I think it comes up if it needs to come up. And I tell people,
Exactly.
you don't have to know the story. Your parent has a story, you have a story, you live the story, but I want to say it out loud so some part of them absorbs whatever that is. Like, you know what I mean? Because it's like just a layer, because there's so much more to that. But she was like, yeah, I do have this breathing thing. And I says, when you were born, you weren't breathing, and everybody panicked. It's like they're not, like, with Wapio's work, it's like we don't give humans a chance. Babies don't breathe when they're born. That's very common. Guess what? The cord around the neck, that's very common. But we make everything this crazy emergency. The baby's like feeling that. And then we have all these sick people and all this, like, what's happening? Again, I'm coming back to that foundational of like pregnancy and birth. And then how do you then, yeah.
Yeah. A big part of what I have come to find from my own lessons, and I'm apparently still learning these, and now I'm on the other side of the menopause gate, so that's a whole rebirth of identity. Talk about identity changes. But I didn't realize how much I was carrying for others. But every person who ever needs help in my world, I want to help. So, and that's a safety trauma response. I will help you, and I feel valid, and I'm loved, and I feel needed, and I belong. So that's a big part of my work now. Is I help a lot of overgivers. And then why do we feel alone? Or you feel like you're giving to everyone, but you're not quite getting back. You're not receiving. And then in my work, we go through like different energetic activations and practices, and receiving is always one of the hardest ones for women.
It's definitely been a journey, yeah, for sure, for a lot of us, like to fully receive. I always say receive ourselves first and everybody else second.
Well, I see it that way too. It's like the first circle is you and spirit, and you and God. How you connect to God and self, and then if you have a partner and you have a healthy relationship here, then I'm not expecting you to be my God. You can be a human, right? I also found back to there's so many things I want to go back with too. When I used to do a lot of body work, that I would have couples. Sometimes I, would have male clients, or I'd work on a family. And a couple of times the men started getting body work. The women couldn't get pregnant. The men started getting body work, and then the women would get pregnant.
I believe it.
Men started getting more comfortable, relaxed in their skin. And I recently heard that a lot of the infertility for women in their 40s actually is the men's sperm, way more than they originally thought. This is new research. It's men's sperm completely declines as well.
They call it the male factor. But I've been talking about this since the pandemic, actually. The sperm's quality is pretty terrible.
Yeah.
And for very many different reasons. But you bring a good point in, is that the father, especially in a male and female relationship, is the father has a part in this, but it's always the mother. There's so much on the mother. And I talk about that. And actually, I do see couples. And this year I've been actually a lot more couples than normally. So I really love looking at that male energy and opening it up together. What's their connection to this fertility journey? Because why is your wife doing everything? Because she's the house, she's the host, right? I get that. But you're right. Yeah.
Yeah. And also, like, if we look at the medical system and we look at pregnancy, it's a medical condition in Western medicine, a medical condition to be pregnant. And we have pharmaceuticals, and we have
Yep.
men who didn't have the experience in their own bodies to really understand the process of, what's going on with women. And just so interesting to work with I have this my laptop is up on a couple of layers. I have like the Chinese cookbook is like under my right in front. But anyway, it's just like I love Taoism so much, and
Mm,
Ayurveda and holistic healing and indigenous healing, because it shows us that nature has everything that we need in order to be healthy
yes.
physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. So when you say like, oh, it's the physiology, it's like, yes, sometimes it's a physical thing. Sometimes it's a energy thing. Like I had a friend who was having these eye issues and rashes and it wasn't going away. I was like, let me do a remote healing for you. Gone. It was a story, it was an energy pattern.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm saying. It's so crucial to get to the root of these patterns and necessary missing element of understanding the human experience or the spiritual experience. And it's so beyond what the average conversation is, even on
Yeah.
social media. That's like, don't bypass. Like, okay, fine. Like in the beginning of your path, yeah, you're like not in the body. Okay, let's get there. But are we actually dismantling the stories that have us believing that everyone else is responsible for us as if they're our parents, even though we're adults,
Mm-hmm.
right? So how, like in that way, our work is on the same page. We're on the same page with our work
Because,
because
yeah.
we want people to we want you to catch up with yourself. It's like
Yes. And also
so.
be like you said, I feel like we are our own frequency, we are creative force, and it really does come back to us and how we want to interpret, perceive, and connect with the world. And I know when we're disembodied, people and this world we're in, oh yes, we know that there are dark forces and there are a lot of ways to be disembodied, even unconsciously. People don't even realize it. But I
Right.
think some of us do see on the outside of things or question things or go, I don't know about that.
For
And
sure, for
then
sure.
we rise where we are. And I feel like,
Mhm.
like you said, yeah, physiologically, the nervous system is a good point for people because people need to feel the texture of something. It's why
Mhm.
everybody wants to do nutrition and pills and supplements. But what about our own activation of healing? I know you understand that. People don't understand that
No.
because we're in such a physical reality that's been forced in front of our eyes more than ever. But when I talk to different people, women, even on other podcasts, it's like, there is so much happening right before us, but if we're not tuning in to use that part of ourselves, but I've gotten very comfortable as you have. It's normal. Even my children, they
Mhm.
understand this energy, not to the point that I'm at because I want them to have their own experience, but my 9-year-old
Right.
has all these different experiences all of a sudden, and I'm just
Mhm.
listening to them, and it's very open. There's nothing weird about telepathy, psychic energy, intergalactic beings. It's as normal as the breath and
Mhm.
the yogurt I eat. Like, why
Mhm.
does it have to be this odd
Yeah,
separation of who we
because
are?
religion. I mean, I'm sorry again to
Yeah,
bash
it's true.
Christianity. I
I
mean,
know.
I listen. I met Jesus meditating on a golf course in my 20s. Like, hallelujah. Like, I
There's
met
a good
Buddha.
bumper sticker.
Yeah, that'll be yeah. But it's true. I mean, it's true. As my
Yeah.
stepbrother, we were laughing about it the other day because I was talking about my book cover and
Oh, yeah,
embodiment and
yeah.
stuff. And I was like, I met Jesus one time on a golf course. He goes, yeah, he was Jesus, the groundkeeper, right? I'm like,
That's a good one. I
oh
like
yeah, he's
that.
very physically, he's very
Yeah, that's
but
funny.
yeah.
But it's true. And then we
Is
come back to, yeah, go ahead.
no, just the shaming. I mean, the interesting
Yeah.
thing that's going on, especially right now with the files and everything, like, as we see people realizing how thick the patriarchy has disjointed our collective web of mutual respect.
Mm.
You know, we people feel like, well, there's a blame which is valid, right? Bring justice now, but kind of like how we've become dependent on pharmaceuticals without doing the inner work. Like I'm going to be
Yeah.
55. I'm on no pharmaceutical. I think I'm in like top 10 or 15% of Americans that are not on or less any
It's true.
pharmaceuticals,
Yeah.
because I'm like, oh, I was always drawn to natural healing, and I'll
Yeah.
take herbs and I'll fast and I'll cut out everything in my diet for months or
Yeah.
years if that's what it's
Yes.
going to take, because I'm so sensitive that I don't want those chemicals. I don't even want like Advil if avoidable, because it's not sustainable. And I want to see men and women learn how to navigate their inner landscape,
Mm.
because it can be very quick to regulate and to shift and to get
Hmm.
guidance and to heal from disease and imbalance with consciousness. So let's talk about consciousness.
Mm.
Recently this is the topic of our podcast, and recently there was somebody looking on social media for someone to talk about breaking down what consciousness is, and I thought that was
Mm.
a really interesting request. And as I write my book, what I'm noticing is the word conscious choice comes up a lot. When you
Mm.
become conscious, you mentioned it, becoming aware of a pattern. You said between your first and second baby, you became aware and did things differently. You chose differently. You were
Hmm.
conscious of that which was not in your awareness before.
Yeah. Isn't that amazing? Yeah.
Yeah.
I think about who I was even years ago or even decades ago, and I look at people now and I have a lot of compassion. And I think
Mhm.
that's where the divide comes. People are like, well, they're this, they're anti this, they're this. And I'm like, that's so interesting because if somebody's not there, we can't force people to be there. Like they have to come to their own accord. But I know, again, I think you would agree with the disembodiment of people. When we're disembodied, we're slaves to this world. And
Well,
that's
and
like the foods, the
mhm,
waters, the injections, all that is a disembodiment tool.
it is, and it's also just to wrap that piece up, and then I want to ask you to talk about what the rebirth of human consciousness means, and I want to listen. I want to hear you talk about that in relation to your son and what you've been seeing working with the spirit babies too, to make sure we get that in. Um, but there's some stuff I read about in the 90s that really dictated my spiritual path from an author named Jamie Sams, who I love, who is a part Native Seneca woman. And it talked about the prophecies of the healing of our
Mm.
world. And going through many, many books and teachings and layers of teachings pointed to one thing, which was for women, when we heal, the world will follow.
Mm.
So if I'm taking responsibility for my part to heal a little bit of karma for humanity,
Hmm.
then I'm not, and I'm not saying I don't blame people like in my day to day, like quick reactive, fiery nature. I'm not saying I don't. Even this morning, I was like, can't believe mom said, we have to go to the cheese, but whatever, like we were doing something and I was late. And I was like, wait, I agreed. I could have suggested something different,
Yeah, yeah.
because my sister's in town and we had a lunch, and I just know, and I was like, stop that. And I became aware and I kind of shifted, like, my own. But the teaching is that when, as women heal, we become met like the mat if women are the yin, right, and men are the yang. Let's just stay in that model for the sake of this conversation. So then the women are healing, and we're noticing that all the things that we see around us are reflections of our own perception.
Mm.
Then I'm not blaming all the men that I've been dating who are not quite showing up in the way that I need.
Mm.
But I'm looking at myself and going, what do I need to do to really be ready again for the right kind of relationship?
Mm.
Right. And it's not to blame me, it's actually to give me freedom to change the world from within my
Yeah.
own energy. And
Yes.
sometimes that means, oh man, I haven't been grounding this week.
Yeah.
Or, you know, I need to walk even though I have to write, like I have to move. Or I need to cry, or I need a session with my therapist, or I need to like go do something for myself for a couple of days, or whatever that is that I need, guilt
Mm.
free, so that I can feel well sourced. Because when mama's happy, everyone's happy, whether you have kids or not. And so I wish the world, as a prayer, like could get that, like these women who are like victims, they're like showing up, they're caring for themselves, they're doing all this healing, like they're the leaders of this movement. They're showing up, they're like, I've been through the healing enough that I can stand in front of the world and demand justice. Like, whoa, that's empowerment to me, you know, is fully taking that responsibility. And it doesn't mean that we let people get away with treating us with disrespect or grape or any of that. It actually means the opposite. It actually means I respect myself enough to embody that as an example, and then have the boundaries to decide who and what and where I interact.
Yeah, it's interesting to look at ourselves as individual sovereign souls of our beingness, our light, and then being connected to the collective of the community. And I kind of want to throw out there something that I've been experiencing myself is, what if even the people around you are not even real? What if they're just a reflection of who you are? Or parts of you. I literally, like, I'm going to share this a little bit more vulnerable, but like a week ago, I told my husband, what if you're just an aspect of me? Like, and he's like, what am I? Am I the angry, aggressive one? I'm like, yeah, that's my part. And then I look at my children, because sometimes in this 15-year journey with my children, and one is 15, one is 9, sometimes they would do things and I'm like, it's me. Like, are they even doing that? That's me. Like, it just blows my mind, and I don't have an answer to that. But something happened yesterday. My kids don't feel good, and one was in the bed, and I was like, I put on some nice music for him. I'm on the floor stretching, and I did some really big activity. I tried cross-country skiing. My body's hurting. And in my upper back, I have a lot of stuff in my upper back muscles since I was 15, I noticed. A lot of heart stuff. As I'm laying there with this block, I have this bamboo block, I'm laying there. And then I'm like, oh, that really, really hurts on that one side. And then I said, what is the emotion, Kelly? Like, you're carrying this so much emotion. I had a moment, my eyes open, I stared at the ceiling, my eyes were watering, and I felt the infant self. I felt me as an infant. And I always tell them, you know, I'm no longer going, oh my God, there's another layer. I'm just like, okay. And I felt scared, actually. And I didn't have to go anywhere. I was just listening to my body. When the tears came, it's like my shoulder popped and the pain just disappeared. And then I went, oh, that's interesting. Because I'm at a point in my life where I'm not judging. I don't want any drama. I'm just like, I don't care. If I have a feeling, you know, it's just going to happen. I'm just totally in such a deep regulation with who I'm becoming. So I'm laying there, and then I realized what you just said. There's something to what you said that I'm hearing within myself of like, oh, I'm healing my inner infant so other people can find their inner infant and love them. But just, I have to be able to go there for myself. Oh, I just got chills. Because I'm like, when you said that, I got like, oh, that's what I'm doing in this work, in this space, in this. I was not expecting that to come up laying on that block. I was not.
We do not know what's going to come up. I had a breakthrough, and I got to go because I have an appointment. So we need to do a part 2. Will you do a part 2 with me so we can open up human consciousness soon?
Yes.
Okay, we definitely need to do part 2 because now I have an appointment in a minute and I don't know where this hour went. But thank you so much for coming. Yeah, we have to finish. I hate that we have to finish, but thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Absolutely.
Yeah, let's keep going. Let's
connect. To be continued.
Definitely soon. We're going to have a part 2. We're going to talk all about consciousness. We talked a lot about body soon, and I'll reach out to you. And your contact is below, so people can link on your website. Any final words before I close us out?
Just keep receiving yourself, you know, keep trusting your intuition, trusting your embodiment practices, and just love yourself and get the support, and just see what supports you next in this world, in your life, in your heart.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.